In this video, I'm going to give you some tips if you're going for a leadership position around how to deal with a difficult team member or a difficult employee. Now, it's really common in an interview process to be asked a question like, when have you had an underperforming team member and what did you do about it? So the reason people ask this question is it gives a good indication of what you're like as a team leader. Like, what's your approach? Are you someone that's very directive and basically tells them, here are rules and regulations, you need to follow it? Are you more consultative in the fact that you have a conversation with them and you work through a plan? So the whole point of this question is to really get an understanding of the how you actually operate. Because it's pretty likely in an organization that at times there will be someone that's not performing at their best, and knowing what to do about it is a really important thing. So this is one way you can answer it, and this is really common type of answer that I actually hear from people. It goes something like this. I had a team member who was missing a few deadlines, they were coming in late, they seemed to not be as communicative in meetings, seemed to be quite disinterested. They still kind of did the bare minimum, but they certainly weren't doing their best. So what I did was I sat down with them and I said, these are the requirements of the position. I mentioned that they weren't meeting these particular requirements. I had a few ideas for things that they could do to get back on track. So we created a diary and we went through and wrote down all the things that they would need to do by a certain date. And we basically came up with a plan. And over time, this person's, I'm glad to say this person's performance improved. So it was a really great outcome for all parties. So an answer like this might sound okay. And you're thinking, well, you know, that sounded okay. What's wrong with that? There's a real opportunity when you're talking about working with underperforming people to actually mention a conversation you actually had with this person. Because in my example, I didn't actually really have a conversation. It was very much a one-way dialogue. I'd made assumptions about what was going on for them. I came up with all the solutions and I implemented it. And so you might think, well, that's being a good team leader, right? That's showing direction. But there's an alternative approach which kind of looks like a leader as coach. So let me talk you through what this example might look like, and you can decide which example you think is going to be best for you. So a leader as coach example might look like, you know, had an underperforming team member, they were missing deadlines, didn't seem like themselves. So what I actually did was, at a time that was appropriate, I asked the person, look, would now be a good time for a conversation? It was in the morning, they tended to be more of a morning person, and they said, yep, it's okay. They looked a bit worried on their face, but you know, we went into a quiet area and I asked them, I said, look, from my point of view, it seems like you are not yourself at the moment. What's going on for you? And the person was initially taken back and they kind of looked like, should I tell them? And I said, look, you're in a safe space. I really am committed to working with you and getting some really great results. But in order for us to do that, we need to discuss what's going on. Because at the moment, it doesn't really feel like it's working for either of us. So just tell me a little bit about what's going on for you. And the person actually mentioned that at home, their partner had been recently diagnosed with cancer. And this is the first time that I'd heard it. And I was a little taken aback, and I was obviously very sympathetic to this person. And I was really keen to see how I, as a team leader, could support this particular individual. So I actually said to them, look, this is unfamiliar territory for me. What do you need from me as a team leader to help you navigate this complexity? And we talked through certain solutions, and I got them to come up with solutions first because it's more likely they're going to have buy-in if they come up with it. They came up with some really great ideas around perhaps starting a little bit later in the day because their partner had appointments to go to. They also mentioned that, you know, they may need to take days off, and I said, you know, that once they knew the medical schedule of attending their partner's appointments, we booked those into the schedule, and I made sure we had team coverage. And you know, it was a long process with that particular individual, but once we'd opened up that dialogue, they were much more, they were a much stronger employee. They got results. When they couldn't meet a deadline, we could work through it with a team. I wasn't surprised at the last minute. We actually built a lot of trust in our relationship so that when their partner got better, they returned back to their high-performing nature. So there was an instance where that could have turned out really bad for both parties, for myself and for that individual, but through adopting an open approach and both of us coming up with solutions that work for both of us, we were able to get a really good result where the customers got what they needed, our teams got what they needed, and all individuals felt listened to and respected. Okay, so that might be an example of a leader as coach. So you might listen to both of those examples and then see which one kind of fits best with you. But I think there's a combination of, I think that the second example is better because it was the other person coming up with solutions. It's more of a coaching approach, and that tends to have better long-term results. The first example, I may have got an initial short-term result, but then what happens when something happens to another person in that family, or what happens when they might get some really bad news, it could all collapse over, and then I'm having similar conversations over and over again. Whereas building that trust and that quality of that relationship means that as a leader, I can kind of work with that person going forward. So think about a time when you as a leader, rather than or if you're going to be a leader, think of a time when you really didn't just leap forward, you actually had a conversation, you had open dialogue. You went in that risky territory of, this is a bit unknown, I'm not gonna know what's come out of it, and you actually had that quality conversation. That's gonna make you score a lot higher in an interview around leadership skills. I trust this was helpful. If it was, like and subscribe. Done lots of videos, plan to do lots more on leadership and lots of interviews and lots of other things. But I want to thank you so much for watching and best of luck on your leadership journey. See you later. Bye-bye now.